Hey guys, welcome to the podcast. I got to be down here low because Fish yells at me when I get too loud. And we just want to, before we get into the podcast today, we want to talk about our sponsor this month. Our sponsor is a returning sponsor and good friends at Figurosity. Figurosity.com is a website where you can go and check out their custom-made 3D models of all body shapes, styles, dressed, undressed, different body shapes, ninja weapons, dancing, whatever. And you can do your figure drawing right from the website. It is free to a certain extent, and then there's also a paywall that allows you access to more content. You can change the angle of the camera on the model. You can change the lighting. It's a phenomenal website, great stuff, great way to hone your art skills. And also, because Figurosity is great people, they gave us a coupon code. And when I said, well, what is the coupon code? They said, how about Chicken Smuggler? And I'm like, great, let's do that. So the coupon code this month is Chicken Smuggler. Will get you $5 off your purchase, which essentially is a free month because it's a little over $5 a month. So thank you to Figurosity for giving our listeners a free month of online 3D modeled figure drawing. And so make sure you check it out, Figurosity.com. And now let's get into the podcast. Yeah. All right, welcome back, Inebri-arts. This is Andy of the Inebri-art podcast. We are here at the Mayflower Brewery, and we're kind of in the middle of a back-to-back. We brought this person in not only because they're creative, but because they are very involved here in Plymouth. Brian Logan, welcome to your second show.
Thank you so much.
Although I'm not even sure like how they're going to go up, so I'm not sure if this is going to go up first or second.
First.
Right. Is it going to go up first? So
yeah.
Our past podcast guest, Mary Shields, who talked about her children's book and the process of creating a children's book, and recommended you because you're a metal musician, which...
Mary's amazing.
Yeah, she's pretty great.
By the way, yeah.
So, what do you play? Let's start there.
I don't play anything right now. I'm the singer, but I was originally the singer and guitar player of my band, and I, in effect, kicked out the 50% of me that was playing guitar, and we got a second guitar player, and I just did vocals full time.
What made you make that? Like, why did you?
It's funny. I've been in bands forever, and we can go back or whatnot. But I was at first very happy that I could do both at once. Like, did I even say the word guitar yet?
Yeah, I think so. Which is really like patting your head and rubbing your belly at the same time. Or
exactly,
the other way,
exactly.
It's very,
those that have done that know that, especially if there's any kind of like odd syncopation with everything, having the vocals going at the same time as the guitar is messes with your mind.
Right.
So when I got that down, I had it down, but I started to realize after we played out a bunch of times that I was doing two things kind of half-assed, and I needed to focus on one of them. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put my whole ass into it.
Nice.
So we did. We literally I kicked half of me out and got a second guitar player, and was able to kind of stretch out and do my thing. But before that, it was fine. But also the kind of music we play, which I don't know how to characterize it, but we have metal influences, we have punk influences, rock influences. At the end of the day, it's a 4-chord rock and roll band, but
it's definitely heavier.
Yeah, we tend to play punk shows, that kind of stuff with a little bit of a metal edge. So with that kind of music, a lot of people tend to sing along. So that was the other problem, is like I was up there with the guitar and using the microphone stand, and that also kind of gets in the way of that kind of thing too.
Yeah.
So that solved that problem as well.
So did you start with guitar like when you were a kid?
So the first thing I was doing, I have been in bands nonstop since I was in 8th grade. I've always had a band practice to go to, with nothing more than a couple-month break for having broken a thumb or maybe a band broke up or something like that. But I've always had a band going since I was a little kid. And I started out with guitar. And let's see. After starting to play guitar in middle school, the first official band I had, I was singing for the band.
And so we're relatively the same age. Was it always punk, or were you in that kind of grunge thing? Or
Well, right, because this is taking us back here.
Yes.
So we're probably talking like 1990. I was singing for what we thought was a metal band. And because that was definitely big at the time. And that's I had long hair. I was full on into the metal thing.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
I was like the first straight kid in school to have an earring.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
So I took a lot of crap for that.
yeah, I did too. And no, it was funny. Like, I played hockey also. And you'd think when anybody says hockey in the 90s or late 80s, you think mullet.
Oh, big time.
So
yeah.
I guess I had a mullet. But I was made fun of for it. And that's just not fair when I think back, because you had people like Mario Ruzicka and Wayne Gretzky and all these people with mullets. Like
Right.
that was the look of the time. But for some reason, they weren't making the connection.
Yeah.
Like,
Yager had an amazing
Yarmy
mullet.
Yager. I had hair flowing out of the back of my helmet, and like that, it wasn't cool. Like,
Yeah.
even though all of our heroes did.
That's so weird,
It's
yeah.
unbelievable. So that was me. You know,
Did you score 100 goals in a season?
No, I did
That's
not.
why.
That's a very good point.
There is a certain skill level that you need to be able to pull off the mullet,
That is such a good point.
and it's
I
basically
was
like
just like Rosie Ruzicka. No
Yeah.
one noticed.
That's it. That's absolutely it.
Yeah.
If I had been shredding in that, then I would, but it would have been fine. But I think soon after we started, you know, when I was a kid playing in bands, I had started getting into punk and hardcore.
What was the band that first made you want to play?
I like to say the 3Ms. So my background has always been like,
Metallica?
Metallica.
Megadeth?
Well, I loved Megadeth at the time in the late 80s and early 90s. But so it was Metallica, Minor Threat, and the Misfits.
Oh, okay.
So right away, I was metal, punk, and hardcore.
Right.
Right off the bat. And that was huge here in Plymouth, to tell you the truth.
Really?
Yeah. So we had our own self-contained, burgeoning hardcore scene in the early 90s.
See, I was a big Anthrax fan because
I was
also
too.
like really into comic books, so that was like that
Yeah.
kind of bridge between the two.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, so being in middle school in the late 80s, I guess, you know, that's when I went through the rock and then hard rock and then metal, and then right away kind of jumped into
Where you're like
thrash
Poison
and
for a
hardcore.
week,
Exactly.
and then you're like, wait, they're kind of
yeah. Like,
wussy
this is
compared-
hard.
yeah.
Like, I like it. It's rock and roll. But then you hear something better, and you move on to.
Yeah.
And right away, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I ever liked that. But yeah. So around when I was a freshman in high school, there were regular, periodic hardcore shows at Memorial Hall.
Well, Misfits played there not all that long ago. It was maybe like, I'm sure it wasn't the original lineup either.
No, definitely not.
But
I don't even know the show of which you speak, but I will tell you it was definitely not.
It was maybe, it's probably like right when I first moved to town, maybe like 6-8 years ago.
At Memorial Hall?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because
How
I
did
was
miss that?
like, was it Misfits? It was I think it was Misfits. But it was like one of those things where you like drive by and you look at the sign and be like, that can't be fucking right.
Right.
There's no way that
Right.
happened. Yeah.
Right.
But Twisted Sister played there.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
I didn't see that, but I saw that they were playing there. But this was like at a time when shows weren't held there. It was just high school graduations and
Yeah.
ceremonies. But somehow, like in my generation of kids growing up in Plymouth, they started going to shows in Boston, and it was really big at that time, going to hardcore shows, going to metal shows at the Channel or the Middle East in Cambridge, whatever the case may be. And they right away took that to mean, okay, this is a real pain in the butt to get up here. Because at that time we didn't have the commuter rail. There was no easy way to get to Boston.
Club in town too. What the hell's it
Man
called?
Ray.
Man Ray. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. And that place had hardcore shows as well.
Yeah.
But so right away people were like, okay, how do we do this locally? It was immediately, a transfer from like going to your first show in Boston, and then there were a bunch of kids here locally that were setting up their own shows. And it was amazing to see it happen. Like,
That's
I didn't
awesome.
even understand it, I'm saying growing up, being, let's say in middle school and listening to Metallica, listening to Anthrax and all of that stuff, and thinking of them all on big stages. it kind of blew me away when I started seeing flyers around for local shows and seeing this stuff happen locally. In fact, I forgot this until this moment, but I remember being in math class in freshman year, and there was a flyer on the wall for Green Day, who was just some punk band I knew of.
Yeah.
And this was before Dookie came out. It was Green Day playing on the Cape with this local band, Time Will Tell, who was our big local hardcore band in Plymouth. And I think Green Day ended up canceling, if I remember correctly. But at that time, I was like, oh, yeah, I've heard of that band, but I don't know who they are.
Right.
And then months later, they're playing at the Hat Shell for that now infamous free show in Boston where there was a riot.
Yeah, I remember that.
I was at that. But that was the kind of thing where, like, I didn't know that this could happen locally. And I loved music at that time, played in bands, started playing bar shows. Somehow.
How old were you when you first played out?
I think 15, playing at my friend's father's bar on Nantasket Beach.
Yep.
So a total biker bar, and I was singing for the band, and it was definitely a crowd that liked to listen to cover songs, and they wanted Skinnered, and we were not doing that.
Yeah.
So I think they were very confused by us. But we had been tipped off to the fact that they would be looking for covers, so we did very embarrassingly play like a Guns N' Roses cover and Stairway to Heaven and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Throw them a bone a little bit.
Yeah, I guess. But I think they were like, how are they doing that?
Yeah.
Then it's funny, again, something I just forgot about until this moment. That first band I was in, I guess we had our first show in my freshman year of high school, playing our first show there. One song, we had the drummer of the Grassroots, who was like that 60s kind of garage rock band. We had the drummer of Grassroots sit in for us on Stairway to Heaven. And I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but all the people in the crowd were suddenly okay with us. Like, yeah, man, like, that's cool. But that was such a trip, like playing these 21 plus bars at 15 years old, 16 years old, that kind of thing. And that was the only shows we could get initially. But then when I started seeing these other shows that I mentioned, like at Memorial Hall or the Elks Club, the John Alden Club, all the places that you know of now, like locally.
I don't think the Elks Club's there anymore, right? Isn't it? I think it's sold and it's getting turned into something else, I think.
Elks Club there now.
Is that the one across from Home Depot? That one there?
That is something else. There was a show there. That was an Elks Club. This is a different Elks Club that I was referring to. But you're right. That is something else. Any kind of place we could possibly find to have a show, we did it. Rented out the club.
Anywhere that was silly enough to let you in?
Yeah. I mean, the Memorial Hall thing was crazy because, like I said, at that time, it wasn't a concert venue anymore.
Right.
It wasn't the way it was. And I don't even think... What's the Phil on now for a number of years? The Philharmonic Orchestra, the Plymouth Phil.
Yeah.
They've got to be... I don't even think the Phil had started yet.
Oh, that's what you're saying.
I think it was right before that. So the staff there really weren't ready for like these like little metal kids, punk rockers, whatever the case may be. And there was an issue. There was this big hardcore band called Slapshot.
Oh my God, I remember Slapshot.
Yeah, they were a big deal. Like
at
least to me. And this is the early '90s, so they played there. And this is like straight out of Footloose. But they said from the microphone, the organizers, not even the kid organizers, but the actual staff from Memorial Hall said there's to be no dancing here tonight. So they're like, listen, Kevin Bacon, like, don't you move your feet. But then...
Did you like bust out your Bible verse?
right, exactly, right. So whatever band I was in at that time, I think it was the same band. I was in that band, Third Rail that I mentioned. We opened the show, but by the time they got to Slapshot, they had kept reiterating this, no dancing, no dancing. And they literally had security guys like come over and like stop people from trying to start like a mosh pit.
Yeah.
And that's before you heard mosh pit on MTV and before people were moshing at Pearl Jam shows, or maybe they were, but they weren't talking about it on TV.
I was at a live concert, the band live, and a mosh pit broke out.
Right.
And I'm like, really?
Right, and that was weird back then. Yeah. So these security guys didn't know what to do with themselves. But then when Slapshot got on, here's this Boston hardcore band, he specifically said, what's with this, no dancing? This is our first song. Do whatever the fuck you want. So people immediately started moshing. They started their first song, and the sound was cut, like seconds into this song. And long story short, he was arrested. Anybody that the police could grab was arrested. He was charged with inciting
a riot
violence,
or something?
inciting a riot, yeah, for saying "do what you want."
Oh, jeez.
And all he meant, he didn't mean melee, start a riot. He just meant, and little did the police know, by them doing that, that started kind of an almost riot, and kids were freaking out and jumping on the stage, and then they started getting arrested.
Wow.
So Choke from Slapshot was brought to the courthouse in Plymouth, and about 4 of my friends that were involved with setting up the show were also arrested. And it was for silly things like literally just still being on the stage when they had said clear the stage, things like that.
Right.
Just it all being involved, because I think they really thought it was all going to kick off, like it was going to be this big thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't in the end. People were very, very mad at first because it was such a big deal to have this Boston band come down to Plymouth and play a show. And at that time, Slapshot was touring worldwide.
Yeah, I feel like the worst thing you can do in that situation is stop the band.
Right.
Because then everyone gets pissed and it becomes
you got to
worse.
compromise and say, look, guys, settle down.
Yeah.
But by pulling the plug, people just lose it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what teens are doing and drinking and taking, and it was the end of the night.
Teenagers?
It was
No.
I mean, so this was that was our claim to fame at the time. But
that's crazy.
And it's funny because several years later, I think in 1995, the hardcore band I was in at that time played again with Slapshot at Memorial Hall. All of that had been worked out. Moshing was mainstream.
Yeah.
Security guards understood it. It was totally fine. Slapshot played there without any issues at all, and no problems.
Why is it you think that we don't have hardcore metal shows in the area now?
I don't know. That's funny because it was such a big deal for us to be kids, and I don't know how we did this amongst like doing homework assignments or playing hockey and doing all the things that high school kids did. Also setting up shows and doing all of that. I don't know, and I don't see that happening. I don't see other kids bringing bands. I mean,
people.
I play in a band now. We're not being asked to play down here, but yet we're being flown over to Spain and Germany. I don't know.
and that's one of those. There are local hardcore bands. We've had Faith from Fable on. Great bunch of guys, but they have to go to Boston or Providence to play.
Right, exactly.
And they're like, no one wants us.
Yeah. But and I think I keep saying we, but it was just so many people, it seemed like it's so many kids involved. I don't think we were tolerant of that. We were like, no, we have to make our own thing. Because a lot of our heroes, like if we looked at bands like Minor Threat and the Misfits, had all started out that way, and we knew about that. We started learning about that, about how they made their own scene in D.C. or whatever the case may be. So we just thought that was the way you had to do it. You had to make your own thing happen. Get the sound guy. We even had to rent like a cop, rent a detail for the night.
Right.
All of that stuff. Lay out lots of money. Bring these bands from Boston.
So you had to pay the guy to arrest you.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Yeah. Yep. Pull out permits. All of that stuff. And I remember it ended up in the O'Connelly Memorial. I'll send it to you later, but I have a shot of those arrests and of Choke from Slapshot and other people being arraigned the next day.
That's crazy. It's funny is like you'll hear. I get very frustrated when I hear people my age say the same things that adults said when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's always like kids are lazy, kids don't do this, and it's like I feel like when you're that age and you're not the football player or the cheerleader and you want to do your own thing, something like that, there's this automatic pushback, like you're automatically trouble, even though you're trying to do something that's relatively positive.
Right,
you're
organizing
always
something and being productive. It's a really good point.
I'm creating something to quote unquote keep the kids off the streets.
Right, and it was art. I mean, nobody used the word then, but I mean, it was art. We weren't painting, and we didn't have an installation, but I mean, was practicing every week and making music. And it was all about original songs back then. It wasn't just doing cover songs.
Right.
So it's definitely making art. But it's funny that you mentioned that about how things were kind of pushed down.
Like I feel like the adults want kids to be productive in the exact way they want them to be.
Right.
Don't do your own thing.
Right.
Do what I think is good.
Yeah, exactly. That is a good point. And it's such a crazy time, though. It was a turning point in music and in culture where, like I said, people weren't talking about moshing and talking about bands like that. All people knew at that time was like big arena touring acts.
Right.
This was like just maybe at the same time as Nirvana coming out in Pearl Jam, and that whole grunge thing, which then set the stage for certain like punk bands to become really big. And there was that whole crossover time where Offspring was big and Green Day.
And I remember being like junior high, listening to Megadeth and Metallica and Anthrax.
Yeah.
Long hair, earring, getting shit for it.
Yeah.
By the time I got out of high school, all the jocks were wearing Metallica shirts. And it's
I remember that. I think we're close enough in age that I
was
lived
like that
that.
sudden like tipping point.
They'd
where
started
suddenly
smoking weed.
Yep.
And they were listening to Pink Floyd and Metallica, but they only knew like the Black Album.
Right. Yeah. You'd be like,
so we called them posers.
Yeah. I like Ride the Lightning. They're like, what the?
But those kids would cause problems at shows. So those jocks would come to these shows, and they'd be like, "Oh, I've seen this moshing thing," and I'm doing a physical thing here, but they would do. Their version of moshing and cause problems and beat up on kids, and it was such a funny time because they loved this idea. They were like, "Oh wow, you can go and fight basically for free."
Yeah,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how it comes full circle. Not to make it too personal, but my son's now 15. He's into Metallica.
Nice.
He's here in Plymouth, doing that same thing, and I'm the semi-tolerant parent that can get it and can relate to a certain point, but I do see where some of those parents were coming from at that time.
Oh,
they were
sure.
scared.
Yeah.
They just wanted the best for their kids. Whereas at that time I was like, what the hell? These parents hate us. Yeah. So I have rectified some of that.
So I have kids around the same age, and I am incredibly surprised. And maybe it's because my parents were older in comparison to I am to my kids. But, my son, one of his favorite bands is performers is Alice Cooper.
Oh, really?
One of his favorite concerts he's ever been to was Motley Crue.
Oh, that's awesome.
And like my daughter loves Green Day, and it's like, what are you listening? Like, what's new? Like, what are you listening to now? And so they listen to as much stuff that I listen to. Yeah. So do you find that same way with your kids?
Well, it's so crazy because you take my son. I had him young. I think I was probably 24 when we had the baby. And at that time, I was actively playing in bands and knew lots of bands and could get backstage and all of that. So when he got just old enough to walk, we'd get those big earphones and let him go to shows. Like we would go backstage with the Dropkick Murphys.
Oh, nice.
At all different places because I've always been friends with them. So it was just natural to me. And it didn't make a difference to my little son who knew nothing but that.
Right.
So he's
like, wait,
known,
not everyone's parents know the Dropkick Murphy?
Yeah. So in his mind, like he's always known the idea of like getting into shows and getting great seats and all of that. Nothing that I had to deal with.
Who are those poor people sitting out there, Dad?
Right. And he didn't used to listen to the music, though, because it was Dad's music. Like, that wasn't cool. Yeah. How do you rebel? We'll listen to the top 40 stuff, which I have always hated.
Yeah.
So that's what my kids, I now have 3, but that's what my kids were listening to, is like top 40 stuff. They're like, yeah, I know this other stuff you're listening to.
Yeah.
And now, of course, my son, over the last few years, has started getting into that, to the point where I finally brought him to a Megadeth concert. You said Megadeth earlier. Nice. We went, I think it was last year, to see them, and I hadn't even then. I hadn't seen them when I was a kid.
Dave Mustaine, now that he's born again, isn't he?
2 of them are born again.
Yeah,
him and the bass player, who I think turned him on to religion.
Yeah,
I can't think of his name right now. They were exactly the same. They didn't mention anything about religion. They were really good because, like I said, I didn't see them when I was a full-on metalhead as a kid. I went to see Metallica. I saw some other metal bands, but I hadn't seen Megadeth, and I always really liked them. So bringing him was just wild.
Yeah.
And I actually got that experience that I used to see in MTV videos where the people are going off at metal shows. Mm-hmm. Whereas my experience at metal shows, before I started getting into more underground stuff like punk and hardcore, was sitting at an arena and like guys banging their heads, you know.
Yeah.
You know, not these videos where people are going off, but the show was at the House of Blues, so it's all general admission and just an open sea of people watching Megadeth, which is what I had pictured. That was my idealized version of them. So again, he's getting like the best of everything at the time. That's awesome. And in fact, both of us are going to go see Iron Maiden next year because they're doing a tour of like all of their best.
Yeah.
Like I forget what they're calling it, Best of the Beast.
Yeah.
So and they've done a ton of theme tours over the past few years, past several years, different albums, different eras of the band, and this is now the best of. And I've seen some of the set lists, and it's incredible.
Yeah. Not last summer, a couple summers ago. Jane's Addiction was doing the 30th anniversary of Ritual de lo Habitual. And so I took my son.
Yeah.
And so I was excited, you know, with my son, one of my favorite bands. I was psyched. And they come out, and I'm like, shit, Jane's Addiction, Dancing Girls. Totally forgot. Like, that's every show I've ever seen, they have, like, the Dancing Girls. And I'm like, So driving home, and I'm like, buddy, how'd you like the show? It's like, oh, it's really good. And I'm like, yeah. You don't want to tell your mom about the Dancing Girls. I'm totally okay with that. And then later that summer, I had tickets to go see Rob Zombie and my ex-wife and her new husband. And
he's local too, you know. He's from
Worcester,
Merrimack Valley. I think he's from more like Haverhill. Lawrence area.
But
they probably got their start in Worcester playing shows.
Like we're saying, like we're from Boston, even though we're not.
Exactly.
You know? And he were there, so I'm like, oh, let me know where you're sitting. I'll come by and say hello, and saw them. And then Rob Zombie comes out, and there's like screens with like topless women on. I'm like, all right, I don't feel so bad about the Dancing Girls
and
anymore.
All that horror kind of stuff that he's into. Yeah. Oh wow,
great show though.
Yeah. And where was that?
That was Great Woods, whatever they call Great Woods now.
Right. Maybe it was the Xfinity Center.
Yeah, I don't know. I just still call it Great Woods.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that's where the Iron Maiden show is next August.
Is
you
it?
Should get tickets.
I'm gonna try. I'll have to try.
Yeah. But I mean, that's interesting too. Is like after those original shows, those initial shows when in the early '90s, going to metal shows and Worcester Centrum and Providence Civic Center, Great Woods, and all that stuff. I loved finding out about hardcore and punk and these smaller underground shows,
like Axis and Avalon.
Yeah, and there's no separation between the band and the kids watching the show. I loved that.
Yeah,
And that's what kind of made a lot of kids start their own bands, I think, just seeing that, you know, you can do this. And that whole thing I was talking about earlier was setting up shows, and kids started writing their own magazines, like fanzines.
Fanzines, yeah.
And there was a lot of that around here in Plymouth. It's funny. And it could be going on now, for all I know.
Well, now, it would be more, like, fanzines are not a thing. It would be like a video blog or YouTube channel.
Right. And I thank God that I did not have access to anything like YouTube at that time. All the stupid stuff we pulled and little ideas we had.
Horrible.
All the corny things, you know, that I'm referring to tonight. If it was all there for everybody to
have a video
look
camera
at,
in your pocket at all times, that's a
I'm
terrible
so glad
idea.
that didn't happen. There's certain concerts I would like to have footage of because nobody was there with a camera phone filming it. But I'm so glad the little ideas we had aren't a Vine or something.
Right.
And even that's dated now to say that.
Yeah, those aren't a thing anymore, are they? Right. So, what's your favorite concert you've been to?
Oh God, it's funny, you know, between being in a band and some of those being fantastic experiences and touring and whatnot, but then also being a super fan of bands, it's kind of hard to choose because it's such a different experience. But seeing Iron Maiden with Alice Cooper opening,
oh wow,
only not too many years ago. What was that? Yeah. Maybe 2005. That was amazing because I'd already skipped opportunities. Because if you think back, like from the time that I probably got into Iron Maiden until 2005 was not. That's a very long time.
Right.
That was not their big important era. I mean, they're already on to the second singer and then third singer.
Yeah.
So I turned down many opportunities to see Iron Maiden, but by then they had Bruce Dickinson back in the band and had been playing all the original stuff. And it was incredible. But I don't know. I love this band Leatherface that's now broken up. They were like I don't even know how to describe them, but they were a British band who played very melodic, kind of heavy punk. the vocals were almost like Lemmy from Motorhead, really gravelly, but the music was melodic punk. It was an interesting combination. But they played at Great Scott, which is not Great Scott. They played at Harper's Ferry, which is now Brighton Music Hall.
Yeah,
just outside of Boston. A number of years ago, and that was incredible. That was an amazing experience. Since then, I mean, the singer of that band has got to be in his 60s. The other guitar players died. They're fully broken up, so it was an incredible, like, once-in-a-lifetime experience. Great band.
And so you, like, I'm so interested in concerts and everything. We got kind of sidetracked, but, like, your band tours. Like, you said you just got back from Spain.
Yeah.
Well, what's the name of your band?
It's too bad.
Well, I don't even think we've mentioned the name of the band.
Okay, so I play in a band called Hammer and the Nails now. I've always been in different bands, but that's the current band that I'm in. And we've been playing together since 2001.
And
so a very long time. And we were a project at first, very much like I was married and had, I think, no kids at the time, not until 2003. So I was married, and even though I was young, I felt like I was already settling down.
Yeah.
So it was very much like a side project of ours. It wasn't until 2008 that we actually started being a real band and playing out. So I think back, if only we had these opportunities to play overseas and play these kind of bigger shows back then, I think I would have been just so much more excited about it.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you're kind of mired down in your job, and I've got 3 kids, and it's just not quite the same.
Right.
Not
because it's not a party. It's, you're always like checking in with kids, and
and I think it just would have been a dream come true back then. It's just fulfilling the dream a little bit after the fact.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it took a long time. We didn't play overseas until earlier this year. So we played in Berlin in April. And that was a big deal for us. It was incredible, and they flew us over for one show.
That's awesome.
Because otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it.
Right.
We all
now, did you get invited by?
Kids
Were you opening up for another band, or like how did?
There were other bands playing. So it's funny. Almost that same scenario that I was talking about, where people make their own scenes, like we did. As kids. They're doing it overseas in these other countries, but now with things like Facebook and Instagram, they have such instant access to the current bands. Mm-hmm. Whereas back then there would be a lag for like American punk bands getting over to England and them hearing about it. And we were doing everything via like pen pals and everything.
Literally. You can literally have a worldwide huge following without ever leaving your town. It's
and
crazy.
Without anybody in your town knowing you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Because they basically imported us to play in Berlin, but it was set up a year in advance. So in theory, a kid could find out about the show and then get into the band and have a whole year to be ready to sing along with every lyric.
Yeah. That's awesome.
But we played like this. It was a club. It was a club show. There was probably 400 kids there. It was a 2-night thing. Our guitar player plays in another band, and they're kind of big in our circles of punk bands and whatnot. They headline one show, and we headline the other show, and some other bands from, I think they were all from Germany. One band was from Finland, actually. So other European bands played the show as well. And then, like you mentioned, recently we played in Spain, although they would have us not say Spain because it was in Catalonia, which is its own region in Spain, who's recently declared their independence. It was not accepted, and it was deemed illegal, but Catalonia has been trying to separate from Spain for many years, so they speak Catalan, which to me, who knows some good amount of Spanish, looks like a hybrid of Portuguese, French, and Spanish. Mm-hmm. So they speak their own language. They have their own president, but they still have representation in the Spanish Parliament. They did not like us saying Spain, so we didn't say Spain at all while we were there. And it's in that little upper right-hand corner of the Iberian Peninsula that sticks out into France. Okay. So it's very much removed from main
the rest of Spain
as well. Yeah. Barcelona being kind of the capital of that area.
Oh, okay.
And they all have the Barcelona. They speak with that kind of lisp in their Spanish. Oh, not Spanish. They're Catalan. Yeah. And we played in a place about an hour and a half outside of Barcelona called Lleida, double L, Lleida. And it was incredible. They had a medieval castle there.
Oh, wow.
That at one point was a monastery. At one point was a cathedral. At one point, when the Moors took over, it was a mosque.
Yeah.
So it had done the whole circle of things. So we got a chance to go out there and go through that castle, and then play a 45-minute set. So it's kind of mind-blowing that we went through all those travel arrangements and staying there just to play 45 minutes and then leave the next morning.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is absolutely crazy. So and that's the other thing. So it's kind of, there's a surreal element to it.
Yeah.
To go back into the 9-to-5 grind after it. But it was a great opportunity. And when we play here, we've played a bunch of shows in Boston, not recently though. So it's so funny to say my last 2 shows were in Europe.
Right.
The next one is in Philadelphia. We have a show.
When's that one coming up?
January 12th or 13th. We're playing in Philly. And it's so funny, like we wanted a different experience, so we said, you know what, we want a classic train show, so we're going to take the train down to Philadelphia.
Nice.
As opposed to driving, flying,
If
we're
you
taking the
have
train.
free time in Philly and a strong stomach,
Please tell me whatever it is, because we were ready to eat and drink down there. So.
well, you can't do either. You can, not at this place. The Muter Museum.
Mm-hmm.
So Muter was the first doctor in this country who's like, us doctors should probably go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And this museum is his collection of teaching aids that has been added to over the years. There's a whole wall of skulls. There's a mummified body that's been turned to soap. And it's fascinating.
It's called the Muter Museum?
Muter Museum.
Is it in Philadelphia proper?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's Chang and Ang,
Yeah.
They were autopsied there, so there's a life cast of them.
Okay, see, I have my friend in the band is huge into that kind of stuff.
From the Muter Museum.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Does everybody pronounce it that way, Muter?
I believe Muter is the correct pronunciation, but I know there's some
Only reason
there's
I'm just
mutter
wondering
or
if
muter.
my friend had said it wrong, but he is full on into obscure horror.
Yeah.
And he has like an operating table from some hospital. See, I'm so not in that world that I don't know, but people who do collect all this stuff would know. You might know some famous mental hospital where they would do operations on the patients that probably weren't legal.
I'm sure they were legal at the time because they were like, yeah, whatever, who cares?
Right. It was
Trans-Allegheny?
It's in Massachusetts.
No.
Denver?
Yes.
Well, which one?
Denver. It's in
okay.
Taunton.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. So he has like a table from that,
which
full
I'm
on
sure
into
was
that
legally
scene.
required.
Yeah, I think he has his TV on it now. But he must have heard of that museum. I'd love to check that out.
Yeah.
That's funny because our plan was to have what our Philly friends told us was like the culinary tour of Philadelphia, which is so funny to even use the word culinary. No offense,
I'm down for that,
people. But we all know the Philly cheesesteak.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, you got to try, what was it called? It was like
Cheese Whiz
Italian pork sandwich or something like that.
Oh, really? See, that sounds better.
They were like, you got to try, and it's like pork with broccoli rabe on French bread or something like that. But apparently it's the other big thing down there. And I'm not cultured enough to know that.
I almost feel like the Philly cheesesteak is a bit of a joke. Because it's like, it's Cheese Whiz.
And you can choose, though. That's the one thing. It's so funny. I used to think it was just Cheese Whiz. You can choose if it's Cheese Whiz or provolone or whatever the case may be. But when my band played down there a couple of years ago, I did finally have a Philly cheesesteak, and I was by myself. And I did really like it. And I did get the Cheese Whiz. It was scalding hot. I think I'm still getting over the sores on my tongue from it. It was unbelievable. But what my Philly friends tell me is that's just scratching the surface of food offerings down there.
Yeah.
And beer wise, one of them also works. I think it's at Iron Hill.
Yeah, I think I've
brewery, something like that. So we're gonna get the whole brewery experience as well.
Nice.
So the music is like an afterthought.
Right.
Playing down there is an excuse to just...
if someone's come down for food and beer, I'd be like, all right.
Exactly. And that was the same thing with Spain, too.
Don't wonder why you like Plymouth.
Right, yeah. And I never knew that we had all of this, because, like I said, I would just work in Boston, not have time to kind of venture out. It was only since having this job a year ago that I realized, wow, we've got all the things that I was going after in Boston right here. Great food and... bars and craft breweries. wasn't paying attention. You just get so caught up in your own thing with family and having kids and having jobs elsewhere.
So, total inside baseball question that no one outside of Plymouth will. Have you been to Sukasa yet?
I haven't, but I saw that and I was very intrigued because I think it's Mexican food.
Yeah.
But it's what, Baja Peninsula Mexican food? Yeah. I saw that on the sign and I was super intrigued.
I haven't gotten there yet, but I've heard good things.
And I think it just opened, right?
Yeah, like a week ago, week and a half, something.
I am very... And what did that take? What was there?
There was a Irish gift shop that had Irish sweaters and...
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
O'Donnell's or something like that?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's right next door to T-Bones.
There's T-Bones and there's a little tiny Asian tasty
Kogi?
Chinese... No, Kogi's further down.
Okay.
There's a to-go...
Oh, Asia Tasty.
Asia Tasty.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting hyper local now.
Yeah, so we're super local, but I just figured, you're familiar.
No, that's good.
I was hoping you'd be like, I've been there, it's great.
No, now you have confirmed it. I work footsteps from there, and we haven't done the crossover yet, but I work for Plymouth 400.
Yeah.
On the corner of Main Street Extension and Leiden Street, which is a block from there.
Right.
And so I'm going to check it out tomorrow.
Yeah,
now that
you have to let me
you
know how
reminded
it is.
me
I haven't
about
gotten
that.
there yet.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how we doing on time. I kind of lost track.
40 minutes.
Oh, okay. So we got some time.
Yeah.
So you've traveled overseas. You've
Yep.
obviously traveled at least East Coast. Have you made it to West Coast? What's your favorite tour location that you've managed to get to?
Yeah, so I used to, like I said, I've always just been in some kind of band or another. I used to be in a group called Tommy and the Terras, with multiple people with Plymouth lineage. Some from that group that I mentioned from the early 90s, time will tell. So friends of mine that I had known forever. And we toured California in 2006. And I say toured, but I think we just played. We were there for about a week, but I think we played 4 shows.
Yeah.
That was awesome because I had never been to the West Coast before. We played a festival in outside of San Francisco, outdoors. That was bizarre. We played in Huntington Beach, or maybe it was Long Beach, which is similar. That was it was all bizarre to me. It's very different over there, and I guess that's, to use your expression from earlier, it's like saying I breathe oxygen. But especially, so this band that I'm talking about, we were just kind of a traditional punk rock band. Things are very gang oriented over there.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we really have it good here in terms of our shows, and there may or may not be gangs or whatnot, but it's at the forefront out there.
Right.
You're not even at the show if you're aligned with a certain gang. So if you think back to kind of bring it full circle to maybe what you were into at the time, like Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah.
So you know how they had that whole cholo kind of thing going, with the top button on your shirt and the socks pulled
and
up,
the big headband thing.
Their crew is still running it down there in Southern California. So when you play a punk show there, you have that element, and there are other elements that cannot show up at certain shows, or there's going to be bad things happening.
So it's not just being a fan of the band. It's I can't be a fan of them because they're the wrong gang.
Right.
Huh.
And I did not grow up with that at all.
Yeah.
And I've always been super open-minded, even with different styles of music. I play in this band that kind of plays this hybrid of whatever, punk, hardcore, and metal or something. But I listen to country. I've gone to country concerts. I like everything. I listen to some stuff my kids listen to. But there it was don't just worry about the style of music, worry about what your gang affiliation was. So that was very different for us being out there. We had a whole lot of fun. I loved the idea of just being in the beautiful weather and going to the beach.
Yeah.
But it was intense at the shows. Since then, this band that I've been playing with for quite a long time now has played in Minneapolis, and it was similar. And that was almost like going to Spain. They flew us out there for one show.
They
We
spoke
stayed
their
in a
own
hotel.
language.
Exactly. That's a very good point. Compared to the Boston area, they definitely speak their own language. in
Minnesota tried
Minneapolis.
to declare independence.
And the rest of us were like, please do.
Right.
It's like, no, it's fine. We love Fargo. Please don't leave.
They truly are as nice as people say out
Yeah.
there. And if you're listening, hello. And in the Minnesota nice thing that you hear about, that was there in Minneapolis as well. And we got to fish on the Mississippi River, which I think growing up I didn't realize it went up that far. It sounds so stupid, but
yeah, that is.
but there we were on the Ole Miss fishing because the majority of my band is very into fishing. So they even brought rods on the plane and like went to great lengths to make sure like everything was planned out in advance.
Oh, that's funny.
So there's a lot of
That's how you know when like you're touring and you're older.
yes.
It's not like where are we going to score drugs, man. It's like where's
Such
the
a good
good
point.
fishing, man.
Yes. And we've never been those people, to say let's get the girls and score drugs and all that. So I think even back, our big joke in going to California was like people would be like, you want to crash on our couch? And even at that point we were like, we weren't up for crashing on couches because it just gets weird. And after a show you just kind of want to crawl into bed and we went for the hotel.
Yeah.
And it was like watching the Food Network at that time.
Yeah.
So it was like, we really unwound. We had some craft beer back at the hotel room and we watched the Food Network. Some of us disagreed with who to win, Top Chef. And like you said, whether it be fishing or seeking out the food in the area, that's probably the difference with being a little bit older.
A friend of mine who we've had on the podcast, I met him when he was in high school. I had a shop that he worked at sometimes. And he's older now. He's got a family. And his high school punk band got back together. Mm-hmm. But now they're all married and have families. And they have like the best name for their band. They're called Domesticated Tigers.
Domesticated Tigers. I like that.
I'm like, that's great. That's perfect for like...
That's funny.
Because now it's like, oh, we got to rehearse, but like I can't stay for beer afterwards because got to work tomorrow. And
right. Oh yeah. No, and that's kind of been us the whole time, with this band. And now I used to say some of us have wives and kids. We 100%. It's a 5-person band. And all of us have wives and kids, and jobs that take up all of our time.
You're the
so
right.
the planets have to align for us even to play somewhere.
Right.
So we just as much as we could play Providence, we could end up in Spain or the Czech Republic. It just has to be that all of us have the right time off.
Are you crazy? That's April vacation. I can't go.
That's it. And we have had to say no to incredible shows, like amazing shows, because the planets didn't align for us. What were you going to ask?
I was going to say you're kind of the right age bracket and era and grouping. Do you know Johnny Earl?
The
Johnny Cupcakes? Because he played in hardcore bands and it was kind of like the right era. I was just wondering if you...
Maybe. Is that Johnny Cupcakes as in Johnny Cupcakes the company?
Yeah.
Huh. And that's...
Is
that like Holbrook or that area?
I think he grew up in like Hull or Weymouth.
Okay.
And he got started playing in like hardcore punk bands.
I guess I didn't realize that part. I'm well aware of Johnny Cupcakes, and I knew they had some kind of punk rock roots.
He played in punk rock hardcore bands, and he worked at a screen printing place, so he made the t-shirts for the band and worked at Newbury Comics.
Okay.
And people would be like, oh, it's Johnny this, it's Johnny that, and like when he'd show up late, they'd be like, oh, it's Johnny Come Lately, and then someone started calling him Johnny Cupcakes. And he made a Johnny Cupcakes t-shirt, and that was like...
That's so... Was it Newbury Comics in Braintree?
Yeah.
So...
Right by the plaza.
It rang a bell right away when you said that. So I used to live right when this band started in 2001. So in 2000, I moved to Braintree, right by the Five Corners where you're talking about. And over Christmas, in addition to working in travel marketing in Boston, I picked up some hours at the Newbury Comics.
No kidding.
Across from Jimbo's. And I remember there being some Johnny Cupcakes connection. Yeah. But my brain is so fried from like life at this point that I didn't remember what that connection was. And that's it.
Yeah. I think that's where he worked prior to starting his company.
Yeah, there were a lot of us there that were playing in bands. It's funny. Like my good friend Mark Fields played in some hardcore bands.
That's when Newbury Comics was cool and not in malls.
Yeah. Well, then they moved down the street to the mall. Yeah, exactly. And even then, we had already thought that Newbury Comics, even though I was working there, was like, oh, Newbury Comics is sold out. They sell clothes and socks.
I think there's a little bit of like on the application, like, are you pretentious? Check yes or no.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I knew a kid who applied there, and I think there was like a section where it asked him to like classify, like it had like band names.
no.
He had to classify what band, like, is this hardcore?
Well, I guess that is product
and
information.
and he literally wrote on it, I don't believe in classifying music.
No. And they're like, you're hired.
Yeah, I'm like, and you got the job, didn't you? He was like, well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I missed that era.
Yeah.
I loved record stores. Like, I used to work before. I think the reason I ended up at that place was, even though I had a corporate job, I just before that had worked at Planet Records, which had a location in Kenmore Square, and it burned down very tragically the morning I was supposed to go into work. And I lived right outside of Kenmore Square, but we had already opened up a Harvard Square location at the time. So, thank God for the owner at the time. He had, a backup plan, but it was horrible. I remember when it burned down. I had actually worked there the night before. Very late.
Wait, are you admitting to something? Because we can.
I wanted to wait, so I looked up the statute of limitations. We've just now hit it, and I knew I was going to be coming on here. No,
yeah.
But I was there late, and I talked to another employee, and he's like, I actually went in there after you. I forgot something, and I went back there. And I'm like, But I also think he's not part of it as well. There were theories at the time. We were right in the area, and it was when Kenmore Square was Kenmore Square. Now it's not Kenmore Square. And I talk about inside baseball.
Yeah.
No pun intended. I'm losing a lot of people on this one, but Kenmore Square was a kind of trashy, dirty place that, especially if you were into going to music shows at the Rat, which was there at the time, it was the place to be. And then, of course, Fenway Park you'd get off at the Kenmore Square T station and go to Fenway Park. But it's no longer.
And for people outside of Boston, the T is the subway.
Yes, the T is the subway. But don't you think now, with all those different like Boston movies, even people know that the T?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. There's always like weird, like we were talking about at work today. What was the one?
Fluff.
Oh,
nobody knows about Fluff.
Regular
outside
coffee,
of here.
I think, is a local thing.
It's definitely a local. I heard about that. And Fluff. Like
Fluff,
I saw a thing on
Fluff,
Facebook the other day.
coffee milk.
People were like, "Why are you eating Fluff?" I'm like, "It's a perfect combination
With
of
peanut
hallowed
butter.
ingredients."
Yeah. It's
Coffee milk,
coffee
absolutely.
milk, yeah.
And that's even more. That's southeastern
That is like
Mass.
Southeast
and
Mass, Rhode Island. Yeah.
My sister used to send my nephew Fluff when he was stationed overseas. Or not
Really?
even. I'm sorry, not even overseas. In this country because he couldn't get it,
And they look up the ingredients, and they're like, "Are you kidding me? It's like sugar, egg, and
It's
it's
with
fucking
marshmallow.
awesome.
I don't know what the issue
It's
is.
amazing.
What's the issue? Move on." Yeah. No, a Fluffernutter is a perfect sandwich.
And then the other one that I heard recently that blew my mind is Nips.
Calling them nips, they would say what?
Calling them Nips. Other places call them
Single serve.
No, it was
cocktails?
like airplane bottles or something like that. And I'm like, that can't be true, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, because they're the right size to get past security.
Yeah.
They're also, if you're a stewardess, what you use.
Oh.
And when you're on
I've
way
never-
off, you buy them and
Right.
put them in your.
I've
But
never
like,
been a
ginger ale.
stewardess.
You've never been a stewardess? I'm pretty.
Oh, okay.
You sure?
Right.
I don't know.
Why is he talking?
I don't know.
Because my friend's right there.
Every time, if you talk about Star Trek, comic books,
Alcohol,
baseball, or apparently Massachusettsy things, he likes to pipe in. That's why I give him.
I think it's great.
Yeah,
I had kind of forgotten he was there. It's amazing.
I try to.
Look, I've got a real niche knowledge base, but when I'm here, I got to use it.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
or when we make him look shit up. So he has this. So for our listeners, Fish has this compulsion, and it's one of my favorite things to do. Like, we'll be sitting at a bar, and I'll just be like, I wonder what Jeff Goldblum's next movie is. And he'd be like, fuck. And he'll have to take out and start Googling it.
I noticed that over here, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
So it's just fun. Like, it's a little fun party game. It's like,
And I think I did my homework, before coming on, and I did listen to a bunch of episodes. And there
you hear
were
his voice
points
at
where
all?
you demanded he look up certain things. I noticed that.
I'm very demanding.
I just like saying that.
Yeah.
Demanding. I doubt that you were like, you must look it up now,
or I shall fire. Oh, I don't pay you. Never mind.
Yeah, you can't say fire if you don't pay him, right?
Well, you can't fire me. He doesn't want to do my job.
That's really the point of it. Like, I had to edit, I think one or two. One. It was awful. It was.
Oh man.
It was a fun episode to record, but it was not our edited out too much of the dead air.
Oh,
so it's like
right.
question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, question,
yes.
answer.
Right.
So
But
for our
it's funny when
listeners,
you say nips.
please email Fish questions, and he will be forced to Google them.
Nice, yeah. Give them Google challenges. But when you say nips, like I think of the side of the road. Like that's all you see on the side of the road.
Yeah.
Even in like my neighborhood, which I think is a pretty like
Man.
regular South Plymouth mundane neighborhood, but side of the road, nips everywhere. And what are they?
I saw
What kind of alcohol is it?
Ooh, this
What's the biggest
Fireball.
one?
Fireball.
Fireball. Exactly.
always Fireball.
Killing people
It's not always
everywhere.
Fireball. At my current place
Just
of
the
work,
most
there is
predominant.
a guy who used to work there who would constantly down nips of Sambuca.
Yeah.
Like
I
you would-
see those, but that,
Like you would get out of, I'd get out of work, I'd walk up to my car, and there'd be like 5 empty nips on the floor. I'm like, dude, you've been
I was
for
actually
like 4 hours.
walking down Main Street and found a full Fireball nip. I was like, "Ooh, Christmas!"
How long did it take
How
you to
was
drink
it?
it?
Not long.
Touche.
I made sure it was sealed.
Right,
'cause
right.
I don't
Because I'm a
want-
clean person.
Well, it was more like I don't want to be like, "Ooh, Fireball" or urine.
yeah, exactly. But have you seen articles like that stuff kills people? Like between the sugar content and the alcohol content, it is just so bad for
Yeah.
you. It's like rotting people's guts out
Yeah.
everywhere, and they buy them by the sleeve.
yeah.
And for
Yeah.
some reason, there's like something that tells them this has got to go out the window. I got to have it while I'm driving, and it's going to go out the window.
I actually
well,
saw an
you've had one
article
while you're driving. You're not making the best decisions as
But
is.
it's almost like required the way they literally
'Cause you don't want an empty one in your car.
If you nip in the car, it makes
You
you
do
look
not.
like you've been drinking and driving.
That's a
because
very good point.
You've been drinking and
Drinking
driving.
and driving.
there was an article I want to say on the Wicked Local website that someone tracked over the last year. They found like over 500 empty nip bottles on this stretch of road in Plymouth.
Ugh. I just it looks awful. Like
It does.
Anytime I take the dog for a walk or anything like that, I see them like nip bottles everywhere. But when we were kids, what was it? It was broken glass everywhere.
That's true. Yeah,
And that's one thing like I think about when I compare like to my kids, like a wireless phone, cell phone, this and that. There was glass everywhere.
Yeah.
It was like we lived in glass,
especially
like
like if you went
soda
to the
bottles.
if
beer
you went to the
bottles.
playground.
Yeah.
There was glass everywhere. Everywhere.
Because these same things that we're talking about, people throwing out the window, were all made of glass.
And I'm not saying like I didn't break shit that was
Right.
glass. I remember,
Right. But it was really
Wait,
everywhere.
I don't know what the statute of limitations on this, so I might be getting in trouble. But there was a half pipe that was built, which was crazy. Like the town built a half pipe, which the liability is insane.
That's way ahead of your time, too. Like, and you're saying Whitman here?
Maybe not.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it was totally
right.
Whitman.
Right. It was in Massachusetts town.
Yes. And we were drinking on the half pipe. And I had a couple buddies that were trying to smash a bottle on the half pipe. And they were like throwing
Trying
it. They couldn't. They were throwing it and it would like hit the curve and like fly off the other end and still not break. So after about the 5th time, I'm like, here, let me see. And I took it and I just like held it out and dropped it and it smashed all the half pipe. I'm like, oh, now I'm the asshole.
And think about how often kids fall on half
Oh,
pipes.
yeah.
And like,
And
your
just it's
wrist
gonna be
is
like, yeah, the next
dragging
kid is
across
just
the
gonna be
glass.
like shredded to pieces, and I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that.
And they were like throwing it, and I'm like, I didn't expect. I just dropped it.
Drop it. Like even here in town,
Yeah.
it's out of commission right now, and we'll come back. But the skate park, my God, if we had that as kids, it would have been such a big deal.
Yeah.
We would go to loading docks of various stores, any store that had a loading dock, and that's where you skate and ollie off of. We had nothing like a skate park, and kids were getting like arrested for like skateboarding.
Oh yeah, that was like the big thing.
So I mean, to hear you say that there was actually a half pipe in your area, that's pretty incredible.
Well, it was crazy. It's like they built it, and you're like, even as a kid, you're like, well, this is stupid.
Right,
the
right.
town is gonna lose their shirt because
Right.
some kid's gonna break his arm, and his
It-
parents are gonna sue the town.
So you thought about the insurance implications?
It
even
just
at
as a
that time?
kid, you're like, who thought this was a good idea? Like,
Right.
you knew, like, I never skateboarded, but I knew skateboarders, and they
Yeah.
were always jacked up.
Right.
And you're now giving them this 8-foot thing to kill themselves
Right.
on.
And I skateboarded a little bit, and we were all watching like our heroes. Like we would get the skateboarding like VHS tapes, and they all skateboarded in drained pools in
Yeah.
California. So it was just like a world I couldn't even relate to, So let alone not having a half or quarter pipe in the area, there was certainly not these pools that you saw kids like shredding
Right.
through. So you were definitely privileged to have access to that.
Yeah. And I fucked it up.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is my official apology to the town of Whitman. I'm sorry for breaking that
And didn't
glass
even
bottle.
skateboard on it.
I didn't even skateboard it.
No, he just drank there.
Just drink. Just
I
drank.
think that was the first time I ever drank. I honestly think that. I think that was the first time I drank.
So you would have been, what, 15?
Let's not talk about
21.
that because I was 21. That's right. Liam, I was 21.
I was an old student.
Yes.
Wait, that doesn't help either.
I was in high school and I was kept back for 12 years.
Yeah, I was a 21-year-old 8th grader.
Yeah. So.
Wow, we have gone
Shit.
way off.
Yeah, but
We've lost the entire listening base.
that happens. And well, where can people go to hear Hammer and the Nails?
So we're the worst self-promoters out there.
All right, so that's it for the.
It's you can. We have a lot of records. We've put out a lot of 7-inch vinyl. We have 2 12 inches. We have a vinyl version of the CD I'm showing you right now, which it's kind of a compilation of multiple releases we've put out by this Dutch label called Rebellion. But that's available everywhere. But let's be honest, everybody listens to streaming music, so you can get it on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify.
Yeah.
It's streaming on all those.
Is there a YouTube channel?
We have a YouTube channel for Hammer and the Nails as well. It's an acquired taste, for people who are into oi and punk rock and that kind of stuff. But yeah.
Well, I want to say a special thank you to Mary Shields for recommending you. This was a blast. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for coming on. And,
thanks so much for
having
having me. I
a couple
appreciate
beers.
it.
Yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, it was a great time.
And so it was nice to have someone my age on the podcast for once, because that doesn't happen often. I usually get...
How old's this junior over
he's
here?
like 35.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I went through the stretch where it was like all 20-somethings, and I'd make a reference and they would just stare at me. And I'd be like, fuck.
It wasn't the worst. We had one band on that the oldest member of the band was 18.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
They were amazing, though. They were
fantastic.
exceptional.
That's cool, and they probably felt so excited to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
That's great.
We had Eric Calderoni from the South Shore Conservatory.
Oh, yeah.
And he coached this band, and they were called Toast.
Oh, wow.
And they were a lot of fun. They were good kids, just really bright, great musicians, and it was kind of like talking to my kids.
That's so funny.
Who have also been on the podcast. They were fun, too.
And I've always thought of everybody as older than me. Like, you had Tim Downey on. I've known Tim forever. And we've booked shows together, and I heard you guys talking about his record store, and I've always been a fan. But that's how it's been for me, is always guys like of that age, which he's probably only a few years older than me.
Right.
But it's funny to hear that now that there's other bands that people are listening to, or actually the younger kids, because I'm used to it being.
I made a joke at work today. No, I didn't even make the joke. Someone else made the joke.
I thought about
no.
I was going to make this thing.
It was my joke first. No, my boss made a joke about Mork from Ork, and
how many people in your office are going to know Mork from Ork?
Most people, but
it's from Nick at Night, isn't it?
No, there's this one girl in marketing who's like 27, and I'm like, Caitlin. She's like, yeah. I'm like, do you even know what Mork from Ork is? And she's like, nope. And I'm like, oh my god.
It's like Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Come on.
But you'd have to be like,
like
Mrs. Doubtfire.
Right.
Like that would like
To connect it
resonate.
back to him.
But
Right.
she would have like more had no idea what we're
It's
talking
like
about.
He was
19
introduced, I think, on Happy Days.
That's
I think.
exactly what I said.
Yeah.
I'm like, it was a Happy Days spinoff, and
Yeah.
they're like, what? And I'm like, so was Laverne and Shirley.
Right.
Yeah.
Those spin-offs are
So wait, did
incredible.
they know what Happy Days was?
Who?
I
No.
think I would think-
I feel like maybe. Nah. I'm gonna have to ask that question tomorrow, because
I'm looking forward to a response.
I'm willing to bet the answer is no. Because like if you didn't watch Nick at Night,
no.
Yeah.
so like Fonzie references,
Huh.
don't know who Fonzie is.
He went to my school, Henry Winkler. He's a
Really?
great guy. Yeah, Emerson College.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yep. He's a solid guy.
he just had something else new out. I
He
just listened
did.
to a
He was
podcast with him
on,
recently.
He's
He's on a show or something.
Barry?
Oh,
yes,
was he?
yeah, he's got a new show or something.
With Bill Hader, Barry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what it was.
He was amazing in that.
Yeah,
That show.
he just
I
won an
loved.
award
I
for it.
can't-
That's
show
what
was
it was.
really good.
Yeah, he
I
just
can't
won
wait
like an
for that to
Emmy or
come back.
something.
He
Yeah.
was so funny in that because he plays like an acting coach for like a really generic kind of stereotypical mid-level acting school or
Oh.
theater company.
Nice.
So he has people do all of these crazy body
Yeah.
exercises and noises and things like that. His name is Gene Cousineau.
Nice.
So good.
He was one of my favorite characters on Arrested Development.
Yeah. I think
He
the
was
later
so
era,
great, yeah.
Henry Winkler or Curb Your Enthusiasm, he's a lawyer on
I
that.
never watched that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Wow, our goodbye is taking quite a long time.
Yeah,
here.
so this is if people listen to this podcast, this is how it always goes. This is very standard.
Good.
So again, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And for our listeners, make sure you watch the Old Colony cast. We're gonna have a Plymouth 400 episode, which is more on track than this one.
Yeah.
I
Talk
felt like
about
that.
my day job.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Right on. Take care.
All right. Thanks for listening to our podcast. Don't forget to check out our other podcasts. There's the Bar Talk podcast. There's Old Colony Cast. And, of course, the Inebri-art podcast along with Jam Packed. You can find all those on Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, pretty much anywhere podcasts are found. If you're on some sort of service and you can't find it, let us know, and we'll help you out and or add our podcast to that, too. You can contact us at Inebri-art@yahoo.com and follow us on Facebook as well as Twitter at Inebri-art. And feel free to send us some tips, ideas, advice, hate mail, whatever it is, you can get us there. And again, thanks for listening.